Well, we're going to jump into the Word today, and we have been on a series over the last 3 weeks. Today will be the last one as well. We've been on a little three-part series after the Creed called Heart to Heart. Heart to Heart. The very first week, a couple weeks ago, I spoke on my heart hurts. My heart hurts, and talking about what do you do as a believer when your heart hurts? What do you do when you're going through pain and trials while serving Jesus and going through all that? What do you do when your heart hurts? Last week, I was in Nashville. I was preaching at a church in Nashville. I spoke 14 times in 3 days. And so I was not on, everyone's like, how was your vacation? I'm like, which one? That wasn't mine. I was in board meetings, elder meetings, and teaching at their school, at their staff, to their team, to their Sundays. I was preaching a lot. But I heard last week's preacher was absolutely amazing. So my wife spoke last week. She was absolutely amazing. She talked about not a heart that hurts, but a decaying heart. One that behind the armor is decaying and slowly falling apart, that if we don't address it, we're going to have some serious issues. Today, I want to talk about money, finance. I want to talk about what does it mean to be a generous heart. And this is why I've named this series called Heart to Heart, because I want to have a heart to heart today about our resource, about our finance. And I know some of you that are maybe haven't been in church in a really long time, and or you first time ever being in church in your life, and you're like, of course, the one time I come to church, he talks about money. This is awesome. So if you're a guest today, you're kind of going to be a part of a family talk, and I apologize for that. I know it's not the most, prayed for sermon. You're like, okay, I haven't been to church in 20 years. Lord, let him talk about money. I don't think anyone prays that. Or, if you brought a friend or a loved one, or maybe you walked in, I'm very aware on even the moment that I said we're going to talk about money, something shifts in your heart and your soul, and I'm completely aware of that. But give me the next few moments to share some thoughts on our heart, my heart as a shepherd of this house, about us as a family. A couple years ago, I was traveling somewhere, and I was in the hotel room, and TBN popped up. And I know many people in this church have never heard of TBN because you're normal. And but if you're a church kid or raised in church, there's this program on television that is still kind of going, but it was kind of like the first of its kind. It's called TBN, Trinity Broadcast Network. And it was kind of the first thing that started sharing the gospel and worship and sermons all over the world on TV. And one time I was like clicking through in my hotel room, and TBN popped up, and I was like, well, this is gonna be interesting. So I left the channel on for a bit to see what this joker was talking about, and he has a big cross next to him, and he says this. He says, I've found the literal cross of Jesus. I found it. I traveled throughout the Middle East, and I found the cross Jesus died on, and I'll be selling 2-inch pieces of wood from the cross for $1,000 each. This is real. He's like, if you would like to possess salvation in your home from the literal cross of Jesus, you can now send through credit card or mail or cash. Put his address up. Send me $1,000 seed, and I will send you a piece of the cross of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And people started doing it. He was like, we just sold 20 pieces and half the crosses, and people were calling in, buying pieces from Home Depot. And now these sore people from Kansas in their kitchen have pieces of wood from Home Depot, thinking that they have Jesus' cross in their kitchen. And I'm sitting there watching this in my hotel room, like, this is it right here. This is why people have zero trust with church. Money, resource, faith. This is it right here. And now for people like me, I have to undo what was done because of bad teaching about money. And I know everyone in this room has a very different relationship with money. And every time I talk about, there's two things the church at large, not necessarily our church, but the church at large does not want me to preach on: sex and money. Whenever I preach on sex and money, my email list, my DMs, comment on socials. TikTok is where the devil lives, I'm convinced. Like when I preach on sex or money, it is wild what comes out of the woodwork. Why? Because people don't like their idols being touched. And for most American Christians, our idols are sex and money. Those are the two things that are mine. I can preach on a myriad of things, but if you dare talk about my money or my wallet, I'm writing an email because that's mine. And then one guy this last week commented, and I loved it. He was like, just stick to the Jesus stuff. And I was like, well, here's the thing, my guy. When you read the Bible, obviously you never have, when you read the Bible, 50% of Jesus' sermons were about money. So if you want me to stick to the Jesus stuff, I'm gonna preach on money every other weekend now and shrink our church immediately. But Jesus taught about money more than anyone else. 50% of his sermons were about money, resource, possessions, acquisitions, land, ownership. 50%. Why? Not because Jesus is obsessed with money, but he knows we are. Did you know there's 500 verses in the Bible about faith? 500 verses about faith. There's 500 verses in the Bible about prayer. Did you know there's 2,400 verses in the Bible about money? And it's not because the Bible puts more weight into money versus prayer. The Bible puts weight on places we are obsessed with. And every one of you in this room have a relationship with money. Good, bad, or indifferent. But me and you know that we are foolish to think money doesn't affect our daily lives. You wake up in a different mood when you know you just got paid. You walk different that day. You're like, $35 Uber Eats? Yes! Full send. And you know when you have $9 left, and you're like, I need to make it 2 days until I get paid. I can do it. It affects relationships. It affects homes. Did you know that like stats, like America-wide, the two most reasons why people get divorced is sex and money? Weirdly enough, the two things we care the most about, sex and money. So today I just want to share some things about our resources, about what God is doing in our house. And what's really interesting about Jesus, every time in the Gospels, every time when he would walk up to a new disciple or inviting someone into discipleship, he took their stuff. Get out of the boat, I need it. Get off the donkey, that's mine. Sell that and give it to me. Over and over and over again, the first thing he did, people that came up to him, I want to follow you. Cool, give me that. What was Jesus setting from the very beginning precedence? Everything you own is now mine. And there's only one man that didn't give it all up. It's called the rich young ruler. And Jesus said, sell it all and give it to me. He said, absolutely not. And he walked away. And by the way, Jesus didn't chase him. Because Jesus would rather lose followers than lower standards. He didn't chase him. Please, please, please. He goes, I will be in charge. If you follow me, I will be in charge. And over and over and over again, Jesus would ask of things. Why? Because possessions greatly, greatly, greatly matter to us. What's really interesting, I read a book recently. It's called The Psychology of Money. It's not a Christian book. It's not a Bible book at all. It's a history book from 1920 to 2020, that 100-year gap. He did a history research on how boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, the last 4 generations, how we view money. And you ask a boomer how they think about money and a millennial how they think about money, it's like oil and water. I mean, that's nothing alike. Like how many of you like in the room, like you're okay with credit cards? And so you're, oh my, no, cash only, cash. Like how you treat money, how you treat credit cards, how you treat debt, how you treat home equity loans, how you treat vacations, how you treat businesses, how every one of you have been given a psychology of money. Everyone in this room has a psychology of money. Good, bad, or indifferent, you think about money a certain way. The only problem is when our psychology of money has more space in our mind than our theology of money. So every one of us, we need to take our psychology of money and submit it to our theology of money. And I want to read you a paragraph from the book that I think is absolutely amazing about his psychology of money. The writer of the book is called Morgan Housel, and he tells a story. It says this. John Bogle, the Vanguard founder who passed away in 2019, once told a story about money that highlights something we don't think about enough. He says this, at a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island, Kurt Von Gutt informs his pal Joseph Heller that their host, the hedge fund billionaire manager, had made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his widely popular novel Catch-22 over its whole history. Heller responds, I want you to key on this sentence. Heller responds, yes, but I have something he'll never have, enough. The hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Modern capitalism is a pro at 2 things, generating wealth and generating envy. Perhaps they go hand in hand. Wanting to surpass your peers can fuel hard work, but it can also lead to an insatiable appetite for more, which will push you to the point of regret. He says, I have something he'll never have, enough. And he goes on to say later in the book, the only thing that those 4 generations have in common is they all believe they don't have enough. That's it. So today I want to talk about us. And once again, I'm not trying to go, if you give today, your debt will be gone by Monday. If you tithe today, there's going to be a check in your, like, come on. I'm not trying to, that's why there's no piano right now. That's why I'm not going to show a Sarah McLachlan video after I share it today. I'm not going to have like someone walk on stage and we're like, come on. Like, I'm not trying to spiritually manipulate anyone. I'm not trying to convince you to give. I'm not trying to do anything today. This is my goal. I want you to hear it from my heart today. Today's message is not about growing anyone's guilt. It's about growing your faith. So at any point during this message, like, man, I feel really guilty. That's not God. And that's not me. That's the opposite of what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to grow anyone's guilt. I'm trying to grow someone's faith, though, when it comes to your resource. So I want to talk about our giving today. We're going to put a graph up in a moment. Let me explain it before you type A, start reading the whole thing, and try to figure it out yourself. Here's a graph. So right now, if you look at the bottom, 2023 is almost over, right? Which is wild that we're almost at 2024. So the last 12 months, the last 6 months, this is 6 months specifically, our church has doubled in 6 months. Hence this room getting wildly full and every other room getting fuller and fuller. Our church has doubled in 6 months. So if you see down here, right now, we have 2,467 active church members that go to Rose. That was 1,300 6 months ago. And by the way, active means like you are moving in the system. So if like for our church, if you go inactive, which is in a 3-month period, if you go inactive, you get kicked out of the system. So like these are like active, moving, connect group, serving, giving, checking family, and like 2,467 people seriously go to our church, which equates to 1,550 households. Household could be a single college person, household could be a family of 7, right? Like at least 1,550 households out of those almost 2,500 people go to our church. In the last 6 months specifically, not the last 12 months, just the last 6 months specifically, 700 out of those 1,550 homes, 783 homes have given. Which means the last 6 months of church activity, 50% of our church has not given $1. 50% of our adult population that is actively moving in our church, whether that's serving, connect groups, like they really, really go to our church. 50% of our adult population has not given $1 in 6 months. Down here, 31% have given less than $500 in the last 12 months, which equates to, on average, $33 per month that people have given. $20 here, $5 there, $23 there. But on average, we give $33 a month over a year, 31%. So if you do the math, 81% of our church either does not give at all in a 12-month period, at all, not $1, or gives every few months $33. Every few months, $33. 19% of our church gives consistently. Let me just pause here for one moment. To all of you in the 19%, thank you so much. To every one of you that give every month, whether money is tight or not, that you give consistently, every paycheck, every time you're working, you're thinking about giving to the house. So all of you, first and foremost, before I talk about the 81%, all of you that give consistently every single week and every month and every year, thank you so much for your consistency. The only reason our church exists and we can do what we can do is because of those 19%. So thank you. Before we talk about the other 81, all of you 19%, I see you. Thank you so much for being consistent with your giving. The only reason we can do what we can do is because of that 19%. Let me just talk to the other 81% for a moment. I love you so much. I'm serious. Whether you give or not, I'm so glad that you're here. What we're not about to do is like, all right, 81%, stand up. And get out. You know, like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to do that. Once again, this is not a guilt message. I'm just trying to talk about home, our house, our family. That whether you know it or not, but just operating in this building week in and week out is wildly expensive. And I don't know if you know this, but like you're sitting in a miracle. Like we bought this building at 14 months old because a bunch of baristas and night nurses and college students borrowed their parents' money. And like we should not be in this building. To be honest, we shouldn't have survived COVID. Like we were 2 years old. Like we didn't know what we were doing. We still don't know what we're doing. But like COVID was rough for a young church at 2 years old that we were barely growing. Like you are sitting in a miracle. But one thing about this building is it's older than God himself. I'm pretty sure the 12 disciples met in the upper room in our offices. And this building is a gift. It's a miracle. But we also have to steward it. Like, you know why it's freezing in here? Because you wanted AC, so I will run it all summer, or all winter. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You wanted AC? Here you go. It's running all winter, huh? No, it's freezing in this room because we woke up and came to church this morning at 5 a.m. with the team that was here, and the boiler broke. Don't know how much money that's going to be. Last week, this building's old. Like, our entire fire system broke. So that's 20 grand. The fire department is like, you will pay this by a certain date, otherwise we will mark the building unusable if you don't fix the fire system. Like, this building is a gift, but it's also something we have to steward week in and week out to make sure that we can function in here. A couple months ago, like a month and a half ago, we did a huge survey, church-wide survey, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of you filled that out. And by far, like 97, or whatever it was, 92% of the people that filled it out talked about, there's a little box on the bottom, what do you want more from us? And it was connect groups. We want more connect groups, more ways to connect. The church has gotten bigger, bigger, bigger. I feel like I'm part of just a pool now. I want more connect groups and more gatherings and more young adult stuff and more singles nights and more married nights and more. So what do? We hired someone full-time last week to oversee all of our connect groups, all of our essentials, all of our gathering points. But that's out of faith. Knowing that our church is going to grow and that giving is going to grow because that's what our church needs. So we hired, So I'm just saying, I'm just being very, very honest today about our home, about our family, that 19%, thank you so much. But the other 81%, maybe today is a really, really good day for you to ask the Lord, what is your relationship like to Rose? That's it. I want to share from 1 Chronicles chapter 29, just for a few moments, and share 4 ideas about our home, about our family. I know this is a very different sermon, because this is the thing. I'm not a hedge fund manager, I'm a pastor. I'm not a fundraiser. I'm not a nonprofit seed-seeking launch sequence like business partner. Like, I'm a shepherd. And one thing that shepherds have to do is feed their sheep a healthy diet. And I've committed to the church and committed to God, really, I'll preach on money twice a year. That's it. So if you're here today, first time ever, you're like, I won't do this again for 6 months. Like, I will only teach on money twice a year because it's not our focus here by any means. But I want to read out of 1 Chronicles chapter 29 today and bring out 4 things, just kind of line by line on what we're talking about with our house. Context, King David, we're about to read about him. He's the king of Israel. And he's tired of, remember in the Old Testament, where God met was in a tabernacle. And they have to set up, tear down, set up, tear down, set up, tear down. Wherever they went, they'd bring the tabernacle and set it up. David tells God, I'm sick of the set up, tear down. I'm sick of the tabernacle. I'm going to make you a home. I'm going to make you a permanent home. We're going to call it the temple. This is what happens. It says, then King David turned to the entire assembly, to the church, and said, my son Solomon, whom God has clearly chosen as the next king of Israel, is still young and inexperienced. And the work, this is the line that got me, and the work ahead of him is enormous. The work ahead of us is enormous. We are 5 years old. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. For the temple he will build is not for mere mortals. It is for the Lord himself. And that's what I want to talk about today. What would it look like to build God a house? Not just brick and mortar, because we know that God doesn't fill houses, he fills people. And as we fill this room, God fills the room, because he's filled us. He says, I want to build God a home. And I'm going to use every resource at my command. I have gathered as much as I could for the building of the temple of my God. Now there's enough gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, as well as great quantities of onyx and precious stones and costly jewels and all kinds of firestone and marble. I want you to see these 4 things right now. And now, because of my devotion to the temple of God, I'm giving all that I own. First point I want you to get out of this is generosity follows devotion. Generosity follows devotion. You know what's really, really interesting is people in this room, you will find money for the things that you love. I have a lot of tattoos, and I'm getting more. I need to finish my legs, but they really hurt. I have a lot of tattoos, and I know how much they cost. I've spent a lot of money on ink. I've spent, I don't know how many hours in chairs. And it's funny to me, buddy, I just can't give. It's my budget, man. I can't give. I can't tithe. I just don't have the resource. Then I see them 2 Sundays later, and they have a half sleeve. And I'm like, I know how much that costs. I've done that. And they're like, oh, it's just weird. I found money in my budget. You mean you found money for something you care about? It's interesting, isn't it? Like, you workout people. Orange Theory is $900 a day. Or, you talk about capitalism, Orange Theory is raking money in. Like, workout people, you don't mind at all. Your pre-workout, post-workout. Flying to do races, getting new shoes, you need new workout stuff. You have no issue. Because what? You're devoted. Some of you are so devoted to the weekend. You'll spend $27 in a martini. You'll pay the cover charge. You'll buy your friends drinks and leave Friday night spending $300 on alcohol, not blink an eye. Why? Because you're devoted to the weekend. You'll buy anything for your car. Wash it whenever. Buy a new tire. I'm devoted to that vehicle. It's interesting how much money you have for things you're devoted to. And David says in 1 Chronicles 29, I'm giving everything I have to the house of the Lord because I'm devoted to God's temple. I want to be a part of a church that is devoted. Not occasional, not when I feel like it, not when I have the money and don't have the money. I am devoted to God's house. I am devoted to his temple because generosity always follows devotion. Now, this is what happens though. When you become devoted to something, it changes your budget. So some of you are like, man, if I start giving every time I got paid, I have to stop doing other stuff. Yes. Man, if I actually tithe, which is the first fruits of every paycheck, that means I would have to budget the rest of it because then I would, yes. Devotion takes precedence. It makes you rearrange stuff. It makes you change things. It makes you stop doing other things because I want to do this more. Devotion, generosity will always follow devotion. I love Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4. It's on the screen, but I'll read it. It says, farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. Can I just tell you, if you're waiting for a perfect time to give, you never will. Well, once I get more, this is especially some of you young college students, unmarried, right? Once I get more money, I'll start giving. You won't. Because once you have more money, you need more money. And then you get married, and wives are expensive. Children are a blessing to the Lord. But those little gremlins need things. So if you're I'm 19, I don't make a ton of money. Once I have a better career job, I'll give. You won't. Because you're creating discipline to always put off giving to when the farming's better. Ecclesiastes says if you're always waiting for perfect weather, you'll never give. You'll never sow. You'll never plant. So first and foremost, I want you to see that David says, my generosity is following my devotion. Look at this quote by C.S. Lewis. This is very unsettling. He says, I do not believe one can settle how much we ought to give. I'm afraid the only safe rule is to give more than we can spare. In other words, if our expenditure on comforts and luxuries and amusements, etc., is up to the standard common among those with the same income as our own, we are probably giving too little. If our charities or our generosity does not pinch or hamper us, I should say they are too small. There ought to be times we should like to do and cannot because our giving expenditures excludes them. It's very challenging. There's things I wish I could do. I just can't because I give. There are things I like to save for. I gave, so I can't do that right now. Essentially, his context is your giving should actually adjust what you can and cannot do. Because my generosity follows my devotion. Let's keep going. Verse 4, he says, I'm donating more than 112 tons of gold and of fire and 662 tons of refined silver to be used for overlaying the walls of the buildings, for all the other gold and silver work to be done by the craftsmen. Now then, okay, just ask the question. Who wants to follow my example? Because I'm given, this is what I've done. Here's the tons in gold and silver and onyx, and this is what I've done. And they simply ask, who wants to follow? First and foremost, let me just say, today's sermon is not a please go there, it's a follow my example. This is not some idea for me. This is not some theoretical, intellectual ascent to knowledge I want you guys all to acquire to. Like, there's things I'm not good at, but one thing that me and Julia is a very, very big deal to us is that we want to be known as generous people. Generous people. So this isn't like generosity has changed my life. Like tithing, giving the first to God, being generous with my resource has absolutely changed my entire life. So I simply want to like echo what David says, like, do you want to follow? And look what happens. Then the leaders, the family leaders, the leaders of the tribes of Israel, the generals, the captains of the army, the king's administrative officers, all gave willingly. The second thing I want you to see is generosity flows from a willing heart. Willing heart. You know, like when you pay your mortgage, Wells Fargo doesn't call you and say, thank you for being generous. Like when you pay a bill, no one's calling you back, thank you for being generous today. Because generosity is not paying a bill. And how many of us treat God like a bill? Like it's not generosity. I'm not paying a bill. I'm not paying off my mortgage. I'm not like tipping God. Thank you, God. I'll do 9% today. Just a little tip. Which, by the way, tipping is getting out of control in these businesses. You didn't do anything. It's like 30, 40, or 50%. And I'm like, where did 10% go? Good Lord. Well, we're all going bankrupt. It's not because of the economy. It's because these companies and their 50% tithing. We're not tipping God. Like we read it in 2 Corinthians 9 in our giving moment earlier. Like God wants a cheerful, without coercion and pressure. So once again, if you feel any guilt right now, please, that is not me, that's not the Lord. I'm not trying to grow your guilt, I'm trying to grow your faith. But specifically pertaining to this house, to us here in this family. Giving comes from a willing heart. Willing. Man, I hope in the future, it's my prayer, if you will, that I would never have to preach on giving again because our church is so willing. It's my prayer. I hope that every time something pops up in the building, we already have so much saved because our church is willing. I hope that when it comes time to buy a new building or whatever happens next, I don't know what happens next with the growth of our church is not coerced, not begged. I'm willing. What needs to be done? I'm willing. What needs to be given? I'm willing. I would love to be a part of a family of thousands of people like, I'm willing. I'm willing. I want to be a part of this. I don't want to beg you, and neither does God. I'm not going to stand in the back there with a bucket as you all leave. Like, no one wants to do that. Nobody wants to check giving records. Nobody wants to ask who gives and doesn't give. Like, all you married people, you know this. You want your spouse to want to. Julia all the time, she's like, will you do the dishes? I'm like, yeah, of course. She's like, why do I have to ask you? I'm like, I will never volunteer to do the dishes. So if this is how this is going to go 14 years in, you might learn today, I'm not going to do the dishes without you asking. Like, but every time like she asks me to do something, I'm like, oh, I'll do it. She's like, why do I have to ask you? I'm like, because you had to ask me. But like every time, like, I want you to want. I want you to want to do it. God is, don't amen that loud. Your sermon was last weekend. This is my time. Please submit. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna sleep on the couch tonight. But by the way, God is not some like impersonal force. He's a human. He's a person. And he doesn't want to have to beg you to love him. He's not the like puppy dog boyfriend chasing you all the time. Like, please love me, please love me, please love me. Like, God doesn't want to have to beg you. Giving has always come from a generous heart, a willing heart. By the way, that's why we are the children of Abraham, not the children of Moses. Because we weren't birthed from law, we were birthed from faith. Giving is not a law issue, it's a faith issue. That's why Moses is not our father, Abraham is our father, because we're not law people. We are faith people. Giving will always, number one, it will always follow devotion. Number two, generosity always follows from a willing heart. Number three, look at verse 8. We've done the verse 8. It says they also contributed numerous precious stones which were deposited in the treasury, where? In the house of the Lord. Under the care of Jehiel. Number three, generosity always takes trust. Trust. Do you follow the context? It says that they gave to God, but it was cared for or overseen by a human. It says they gave to the house of the Lord, but Jehiel overseed it. That's the relationship with tithing, is that you give to God and trust those who oversee it. By the way, two forms of giving. Number one, you'll never give if you don't trust God. Let's start there. If you don't think he cares, if you don't think he loves, if you don't think you matter more than the sparrow, if you don't think you matter more than the grass that's withering, if you don't think God knows, first and foremost, you would never give your resource to someone who does not care. And ultimately, your biggest statement, I don't trust you. So first and foremost, you have to come to the realization, do I trust God? And by the way, you have resource not because you're good on LinkedIn, it's because God's favor's on you. You don't keep getting business acquisitions because you're super intelligent, it's because God's favor's on you. You don't have open doors because you went to Duke, God's favor is on you. It's not because you have friends in Nike C-suite, God's favor is on you. So first and foremost, let's remind ourselves what you have is not because your intellect, your gifting, your school, your degree, or your name in your bio. It's because God's favor is on your life and he opened doors for you. So first and foremost, let's remind ourselves, do I trust God? Do I trust him? Okay, yes, I trust him. Second, do you trust people? Being me. Being very transparent today. Why would you ever give to a church if you don't trust? And many of you have relationships like with churches from all the TBN stuff and churches. And let's just be honest, churches have done very weird things with money. Pastors talk about it in the most manipulative way, which I refuse to do. We're not trying to build some prosperity gospel. I'm trying to build biblical gospel. Well, if I tithe today, will I get a job? No, but God will be good. So if I give this today, is doors going to open? No, you're giving because doors did open. Prosperity gospel has reversed the order. If I give today, doors will open. No, I give every day because I woke up in my right mind. I woke up because I'm blessed. I give out of something, not for something. Don't get the order reversed. But it takes trust. They gave to the house of the Lord, and who oversaw it? Not the Lord, Jehiel. And just know that we take every dollar very seriously at this church. Every dollar that comes in, every time we take care of this building. And for me at this building, let's just be honest, this building's really annoying a lot of the times. There's no parking. You either park on Stark today and walk all the way up. I know people have stopped coming to the church because it's inconvenient. I had every intent of selling this building a while ago. I was like, let's just find a new building. This is not working. Our church is growing too fast. And somebody out of nowhere, which has been a sentence in my heart for years, does not know anything. He came to me, he's like, remain inconvenient. And I was like, okay, Lord. But this building's inconvenient. We just got AC. Boiler works half the time. We have no parking. We need more kids' rooms. We need a couple, this room is it's annoying at times, to be honest. Stuff breaks all the time. But I've decided to not let honey turn to gravel. Like we are sitting in a miracle, and I refuse to let the honey turn to gravel. It's like we take stuff very seriously with our money, our resource, our staff, how we spend, what we don't spend, how we do, but like with our staff, our eldership team, our financial board, myself and Julia specifically. Like you know this, right? Like when you give to the house, and I'm the overseer, if I'm J Hill, if you will, I will stand before the throne and give account. You know that, right? That when Jesus comes back on that white horse and I stand before the throne, I will give an account. Me. You will not give an account to what Rose did with your money. I will give an account. You will give an account if you were obedient with what God gave you. So if God forbid, myself or whoever I give the church to in 30 years, probably Quinn, and you're all in trouble. And someone does something horrible with church finances, you won't give an account to God for what we did with your money. You will give an account if you obeyed God to do what you did with it. I will give an account to the Lord for how me as the shepherd of this house, not Christendom, not Bridgetown or Door Hope or Imago, like Rose, and I will stand before the throne with an account. All that being said, I take my job immensely seriously. What I do on the stage every Sunday, I'm not giving a TED Talk. I'm not communicating. I'm not sharing. I'm a shepherd that my job is to feed sheep every Sunday and to care for sheep. And those 2,400 people that God has put in our care, I take seriously. God, am I caring for your people? Those that you brought into the fold, am I caring for them correctly? Am I treating them, are we taking care of the sheep in this house correctly? So, I understand that generosity takes trust. If you're like new today, you're like, I've only been here for a few weeks, I don't trust you yet. Please don't give. Someone came up to me recently, and she's 74 years old. She came up to me, and she was like, I love this church. She's like, you know why? It makes me so uncomfortable every Sunday. And she goes, I want to grow really bad. And they go, we've been coming for about 4 months, and it's time to start giving. You know, I wasn't like, it took you 4 months to start giving. I was like, thank you for praying about it, thinking about it, considering it, taking time to understand if this is your home or not. So if you're newer to like, I don't know if I trust you yet, this whole thing, that's okay. But for those who have been here for months and months and months and years and are in that 81%, would you pray about trusting the Lord in me and us as a staff and team with your resource? Fourth and last, generosity goes where I can't. I was reading an article recently about cathedrals. Do you know how long a cathedral takes to build? 500 years. The average one, 500 years, sometimes 300 if they were smaller, but most cathedrals took 500 years. Could you imagine right now if I took an offering right now for something you would never be a part of? How hard would that be for an American to give towards something they don't receive? 500 years. Please give me money. You'll never be a part of it, though. Neither will I. But there will come a day in 500 years from now when a generation will sit in something that we sowed into. You won't see it, but your great-great-grandchildren will. How future forward are we? When we were raising money for this building, we were 14 months old. We were babies. We had no idea what we were doing. An older couple, they're in their 70s, maybe 80s, came to church. That one Sunday, never came again. They're visiting their son that went to our church, who doesn't go to our church anymore. They came up to me. It was a Sunday we announced we're buying the building. We wrote a $100,000 check. Said, hey, this is toward the building. I was like, you don't know me? You don't go here? You're going to get on a plane and fly back to California? Their son ended up not attending our church anymore later on. They're like, no, we know where this is going. And we want to be a part of it. Like there's people that have sowed so much that have moved across country for jobs and marriages and school, and that you're sitting in their sacrifice right now. They aren't even here anymore. You're still sitting in their sacrifice. Why? Because giving goes where I can't. In a few weeks here, we're going to do a house of gifts. When hundreds of children will come shop in dignity to have a Christmas they would not have without us sowing in thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. All the stuff we get to do all year. If you're giving toward the house, you're a part of that. And I do believe, this isn't in the Bible, but like I believe it. I think when you get to heaven, people are going to walk up to you and say, hey, thank you for giving. I don't know you. Oh, no, you sent that missionary who started that orphanage, who saved me, where I met Jesus. And because of your giving, I became like, I think you will meet people in heaven that will say, thank you for giving. You didn't go to Uganda. You didn't go to Mexico. You didn't go to that neighbor's house. You didn't drop groceries off, but you did. Because your giving goes where you can't. You would be amazed how many places you've been this year. You're like, I haven't even left my home. Oh, yeah, you have. Because we are generous with our finances and stewards of our resource. You've been a lot of places, and you have helped a lot of people that you would never even meet. Why? Because that's what giving does. You know, in this story, David dies before the temple's ever finished. He never even sees it. Who does? His children. May it be that our children and grandchildren receive a house and a church because their parents and grandparents decided in their young 20s and 30s to build God a home. And your great-grandchildren will meet Jesus and find their spouse and graduate college and make lifelong friends and serve the house of the Lord because 30 years ago, their grandparents decided to build the house. Can you imagine that? In years to come. Why? Because we're so right now focused. That's why Matthew says, don't store your treasures here. Store your treasures in heaven. I don't care about this economy. I don't care about my stuff here. I'm storing away for my eternal home where moths and robbers cannot destroy. I'm storing treasure there, not here. That's it. That's where we're at. Let's get to the 19%. I love you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. To the other 81%. Would you pray about it? Just pray about joining us. Join the house. Because we have a long, long ways to go. Long ways to go. We also have a lot of stuff we want to do. And I refuse to let finances stop vision. We have so much we want to do. I have so much in my heart. By the way, I'm not impressed by the 2,400 people. There's a million people that live in this little city alone. So there's 50,000 other people that are waiting for us. There's 500,000 other, we are just getting going. There's a lot that I want to get done in my time here as the pastor, whether it's another week or 30 years. As long as God has asked me to do this, I'm here. But we're going to need a resource to do it. And I'm trying to do what David did. I want to build God a house that he might dwell in, that lives might be forever changed. He's asking you to join with us, pray with us, consider it. Are we all right? Not too painful?